Please be seated. So a little side statement this morning in Christian formation class, we all learned about someone we had never heard before. It was Saint Bernardino of Siena. And it seems like what Saint Bernardino of Siena was very well known for was his preaching a cycle of 40 sermons, 2 hours long, for 6 straight weeks. So just be blessed. Wow. Let us go across to the other side, he says. Why? What's over there? On that dark shore with those menacing black clouds. Why do we have to go to the other side when there's a storm brewing? If you're a Harry Potter fan, you will remember Bogarts. A Bogart is a shape-shifting creature that takes on the form of your worst fear. Ron's worst fear were giant spiders. Hermione's worst fear was having a professor tell her that she failed an exam. And Harry's worst fear was a Dementor, his Bogart. That's what's over there on the other side. Bogarts. Things that take the shape of our worst fears. The people you don't like, the conversations you'd rather avoid, the places you really don't want to go. They're all over there on the other side. Mark starts his gospel with, "When evening had come." You see, there's always a growing darkness in these kind of stories. When evening had come, he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." If this were a screenplay instead of scripture, he might have said, "Let's go into the cellar of that old abandoned house." Or, "Let's go into that old abandoned hospital." And most likely one of the disciples would have turned to the camera and said, "I've got a bad feeling about this." Maybe one of them did, just before they stepped onto the boat, because they knew what was on the other side, or at least they thought they knew. Gigantic Philistines are over there, mad kings, Gentiles, people possessed with legions of demons. The others are over there on the other side. Yet Mark reminds us what we are called to do. We are to be movers for Jesus. We are to be the Jesus movement. Mark is writing for a community grappling with how to love those who are different, those who have been enemies, those looked upon as sinners, as outsiders, as dangerous. Mark's community is wrestling with questions like, if Gentiles come into this mostly Jewish community, do they have to be circumcised? Do we all have to follow the same dietary laws? How do we accept someone into this community if they don't read Scripture the same way we do? How do we accept someone who looks different? Someone who speaks another language? Those who don't fit into our boxes of gender, race, or class? Mark's community is in the midst of a voyage into this dark, fearful, and uncharted territory. Sound familiar? It's a journey that is always chaotic. How do we live alongside the others in our community? Do we change them, or do we let them change us? It is a crossing that is never easy, but we make it many, many times in our lives. Every crossing feels like sailing in the dark. With all the changes around us, We are sailing in the midst of a storm. What do we do when our life situation changes, when the wind shifts and the seas rage? What do we do then? Jesus makes this sea crossing to the other side with the disciples twice in Mark. Both times are at night. Both times there is a storm. This time, Jesus goes with them and sleeps in the stern. The next time, he will make them go by themselves. And when they get into trouble, he will walk to them in the midst of the storm. The disciples are always hoping that he will perform a divine act and relieve them of their fear. I think Mark is telling us that we have to do the same. We have to do some work. That there is another way than reacting out of fear. We are to find the strength and some kind of inner calm that will allow us to endure and even grow through these storms. Through faith, through the love of Christ who is in the boat with us. Christ is with all who struggle and suffer. Christ is the peace and the strength. Jesus is the calm that we draw on. We are called to seek Jesus, seeking that inner calm, seeking to love with courage, because Jesus keeps calling us to go to that other shore. What or who is on the other side for you? Who are your Bogarts? We all have them. There are many other sides. For the young, growing up and becoming an adult is another side. For those who are older, retirement is another side. What will I do? Who will I be if I'm not working? The other side might be getting married or getting divorced, facing an operation, or saying goodbye. The lived experience of people of color is the other side for many Americans. The lived experiences of so many on the margins is the other side for many others. And for all of us, the other side is ultimately death. We all have other sides, places that we don't want to go. But that's where Jesus invites us to go. That's where Jesus wants us to go. That's where Jesus is taking us, to the other side, into that foreign territory, into the storms of life, to those places we'd rather not go. We are called to follow Jesus there and to do so in love. And Jesus wants us to go there, not because it's our job to change those on the other side. No, he wants us to understand that love is often hard. Jesus does not insist on a night voyage on a stormy sea to make an impact on the ones who live across the sea on the other side. He does it to change the ones making the voyage. He does it to change the disciples. He does it to change us. He does it so that we will experience a change in ourselves, so that we will discover that reservoir of hope, that endless supply of peace and courage, that love is in the voyage. It is a new way that allows us to open wide our hearts to any and all who seek Christ, to all who are marginalized, to all whose stories we need to hear in order for us to recognize and more fully participate in the spread of God's reign of justice and peace. so that we will one day live together with all our sisters and brothers in unity and love.